The Royals needed a dominant outing from their ace tonight, and he delivered when it mattered most. We'll dive into it next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, do some hosting, co-hosting, and some producing as well. So stay pretty busy in the sports world. But just for this podcast, you can come here every single day, Monday through Friday, and we'll have 30-minute episodes just dedicated to Kansas City Royals baseball. Now, today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, questions and comments can always be left to me on the YouTube page or to my Twitter handle at JohnnyJ_15. Well, as I said to open up the show, tonight was huge for this Royals team, based off what had happened in Arlington. I was down there, a perfect time, I guess, to check them out on the road, get an up-close and personal look away from Kauffman Stadium, and it was the worst series they put together all year. But maybe I was just bad luck for it, and I'll need to be more careful about which series I pick, going on the road from this point on. But tonight did feel very important. I think just for the morale of the team, I think for the fan base to take a collective deep breath and know that this team does have a bad team at Kauffman Stadium, and the Royals had played pretty well at Kauffman Stadium this year. So they had this opportunity to just kind of, start fresh again. There were a lot of roster moves made today, and we'll talk about that in this show today, probably in segment number 2, but a lot of roster moves happened. They were coming back home, and most importantly, they had their ace on the bump. They had Cole Ragans on the bump against the Miami team that has a very bad offense, has very few guys that strike much fear into you. But here's the thing. On the road trip, the Royals starters were nibbling it a lot, and when it felt like the Oakland series got a little bit tight, the starters nibbled. They weren't attacking those hitters as they should have been attacked because they were not scary hitters. They weren't hitters that were supposed to impose their will on you. It was nothing like that. Texas, I could understand, but I thought that Brady Singer, Michael Wacha, and even Alec Marsh from time to time attacked Texas's lineup better than the way some of the guys attacked Oakland's lineup. So tonight was a big measuring tool for me because Miami's lineup is somewhat comparable to Oakland's, and would Cole Ragans, as he did against Oakland, nibble against this Miami lineup? And what's funny is he started Jazz Chisholm off, first batter of the game, on a 3-0 count. And that's truly, as, lack of control, or the lack of control he really showed all night long, was just that 3-0 count. But then he battled back and got a pop out to start the game. Miami did strike first off Ragans, and I think that was in the 3rd or the 4th inning. We had to dance around danger in the 4th inning when he loaded the bases. But Brian De La Cruz, who was really good against the Royals last series in Miami, I think drove in 7 in that 3-game series. He had an RBI double, but it was only the run that Cole Ragans gave up on the night. So you look at, the meaning of this game. You also understand the opponent, and the Royals didn't jump back into the wild card picture. Toronto blew a 4-run lead in the 8th tonight, and that allowed Boston to hold their spot. Minnesota didn't play tonight. Cleveland beat Baltimore, so just stop expecting Cleveland to lose any games. I think they might have the Central wrapped up at this point. To have a 8-9 game lead. You're now up to 50 wins on the season. Stephen Vogt has done an incredible job with this Cleveland team because they don't look like a team that should be 24 games over 500, but they are. You are what your record says you are. And tonight, the Royals were able to look at Miami and understand that even though they had won 4 of their last 5, they were a team that was 23 games under 500. And you had your ace on the bump, even with the scoreless streak that you had. You needed to be able to grab tonight. That's why it was so important. And we got ace type stuff from Cole Ragans. And we've gotten that from Cole Ragans going back to May 17th or May 15th, whatever it was, right after the start in Anaheim. He's been nearly flawless. It has just been quality start after quality start. The strikeout numbers are going up, even though last couple of outings, the walk numbers have hurt him just a little bit. It wasn't that important to me in tonight's game. Tonight's game was more so about him doing what he usually does and the offense just giving him enough. This lineup just giving him some run support that he never got in that game against the Oakland Athletics. That, to me, was going to be the difference. And credit the offense, they weren't great. They probably should have tagged Miami's starter for 5, 6, 7 runs. They only got a couple off of him. But in the end, you win 4-1. And you snapped the little losing streak that you were on that just, bled over from Arlington. You come back home where you've been, a very successful and winning ball club this year. And you just impose your will on a team that you need to. With Cleveland coming in town at the end of this week and into the weekend, I think at this point you have to eyeball this Miami series and expect nothing less than a sweep. Yeah, winning the series is fine, but seeing Miami's lineup tonight and the way Ragans dominated them over 6 innings, I'd expect Seth Lugo to do the same tomorrow, and hopefully Brady Singer can continue the trend that he's had in the last 2 starts and just keep the team in it. 5 innings, 1-run ball, 6 innings, 3-run ball. Get yourself a quality start, and the Royals should walk away from this series with a sweep. And then all of a sudden you look back up and they're 8 games over 500. Now, Cleveland could do damage to that record, but it feels a lot better than, if you just entered that Cleveland series at, 5 games over or 4 games over. Getting a sweep now because they have finally won game 1 of a series for the first time since the Seattle series, it feels different now. You feel a little less pressure going into game 2, where you had that pressure. You didn't have that free and easy mentality against Oakland. You didn't have it against the Dodgers. You didn't have it against the Yankees. You certainly didn't have it against Texas. And for this Monday night game, not a packed crowd, to just be able to hand the ball to your ace and let him go dominate, it still is a wonder that the Royals got Cole Ragans for what they did. I understand Texas whipped up on the Royals, really in the season series. The Royals went 1-5 in those 6 games. And the Raiders got a World Series championship, and Aroldis Chapman certainly was a big piece of that bullpen, a bullpen that was struggling. But Cole Ragans, in return for Kansas City, has transformed their entire rotation. Yeah, Seth Lugo has been, I think, the biggest surprise. But to put this type of pressure this year on Cole Ragans, despite never throwing more than 100 innings in a season, it's unbelievable to see what he's done. To have that pressure. Bobby Witt Jr. had immense pressure, being the superstar of this team, but Cole Ragans had the pressure of being the ace, and he has delivered. He has 100% delivered in the first half of the year being that ace. I think his stuff is only getting better. I think he's getting more reliable each start. And if they can give him even run support like they did tonight with 4 runs, he's going to win you a lot of baseball games. There's going to be a lot of times he grabs the ball and goes 6, 7 innings, only 3 runs or less, strikes out 9, 10, or 11, and he's your ace for that reason. This is why I think it would be fascinating. Of course, this is going to be biased, but it would be fascinating to see the Royals in a best-of-3 wildcard series when they can turn to Cole Ragans and Seth Lugo for Game 1 and Game 2, and then probably Michael Wacha for Game 3. If they can get their foot in the door, get back into a wild card spot, there's 82 more games to go. Tomorrow will be the 50% point of the season. I'd imagine the Royals are still going to be in a playoff hunt in September. I've already stated my claim. I think they do get in, but they're only going to get in if guys like Cole Ragans and guys like Seth Lugo can do what they did tonight. Be the stopper, be the workhorse. And tomorrow, we get to see if Seth Lugo can just take the baton from Cole Ragans, carve up this Miami team, and then hopefully Lugo can pass it on to Singer, who will try to go for a sweep on Wednesday. That's probably getting ahead of ourselves, though. You just got to worry one game at a time. But tonight, Royals get it done, snap the losing streak, get their first series opening win since June 7th against the Mariners. That wild come-from-behind victory. This was a long time coming. But Ragans dealt. He was lethal. Offense did enough. Back in the win column, 43 and 37. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, were a couple of these roster moves the spark this offense needed, or is it just fool's gold and it's really just one game? We'll dive into it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. We want to let you know about a couple sponsors, starting with FanDuel. I love sports, and I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports just aren't sportsing like we all want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is looking to hooking up all their customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Now, maybe you put some money down on Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals tonight. Maybe you put some more money down in the College World Series. Whatever the case may be, you still got baseball going on, and you're going to have baseball going on for a few more months. If you want to start putting some good money down, maybe look into Game 2 of this series between the Royals and the Marlins. Seth Lugo to go over 6 innings. He's done a lot this year. Maybe you'll win some money if you want to take my word for it, but you can do so over at FanDuel. We also want to tell you about PrizePicks, and you can win up to 100 times your money now on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000, and if you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week. From lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. And even though the NBA Finals is over, the hoops action doesn't stop on PrizePicks. Women's basketball is still heating up with stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Breanna Stewart. And you can win up to 100 times your cash by watching them all ball out. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. Well, the plan for me before the game tonight was to do a podcast episode that would go over some of the roster moves that the Royals made, but I also thought it would be better to see this game actually happen, see what the lineup looked like, if this move or two was going to be the spark they really needed. A lot of different ways that I was thinking about breaking down. Michael Massey coming off the injured list, CJ Alexander taking the place of Nelson Velasquez, and what the Royals may be expecting from a guy like Alexander, what type of pressure they could be putting on Michael Massey to be the guy they can count on every single day. I know he's going to DH right now as he works his way back to a form of comfortability where he can play both the field and hit. They want to slow play it a little bit with his back problem. But this move, I think, was a spark the clubhouse needed. But also, I think the right move to give the nod to a guy like CJ Alexander, who certainly earned a look at the big league level. Now, in his debut tonight, can't really take away much that was very impressive. The only thing that caught me off guard was to get him into the lineup. Had to move Maikel Garcia over to second base. But moves like that, I think, show where this team is at, what they need, and if it can be the spark that gets them back into a level of confidence that they haven't seen since being 15 games over 500. Getting back to that confidence, to me, is vitally important for a second half push. If they are able to finish the first half of the year out strong instead of limping like we were kind of expecting them to, going 8-18 since being 15 games over 500, it would have put a real damper on everything in the second half, whether they'd be buyers, whether they'd make more than a move or two. A lot of those things were coming into question. But we also knew that in a span of 3 or 4 days, going back to last Friday, the Royals were going to get Hunter Renfroe back, they were going to get Michael Wacha back, and they were going to get Michael Massey back. So those 3 players now are all back. Wacha threw 5 innings, a 1-run ball. Hunter Renfroe homered tonight, and Massey had a hit. CJ Alexander, not great, but with the way Nelson Velasquez was playing, and I was somebody who was a big supporter of Nelson Velasquez, but right now he's not cutting it. A lot of guys in the lineup aren't cutting it, but it's been a long time since Nelson Velasquez has been the hitter that the Royals need him to be. And CJ Alexander may be here for a week or two. Maybe he's here for a little bit longer, but he does deserve a look. He deserves to showcase if his numbers down in AAA can translate to the big league level. I'm not sure that the overall numbers, even though he had a triple slash line that was far superior than a lot of guys out there in AAA, we've seen this year good numbers from Omaha not really translate to the big league level. But I do think it was the perfect time to just see if it could be translated. If it doesn't work out, you're getting near July 1st, which is when J.J. Picollo said that he will evaluate where they're at and go from there in terms of making a trade. And if CJ Alexander isn't the answer, well, then you need to go find somebody who can be the answer for this team. Maybe a leadoff hitter. Maybe it's a DH. Who knows what the Royals are really looking for? We've seen the smoke, and I always say where there's smoke, there's fire. We talked about that in the offseason, and I do think the Royals are going to add some pieces to this team. But right now, against a team like Miami with a 10-game homestand on deck, it was the perfect time to make a move like this. Instead of forcing the issue with Nelson Velasquez, seeing if he could hit his way out of it, playing really once every 3 games or once every other game. This was the time to see if CJ Alexander, being a left-handed bat, could be someone that, I don't know, maybe in September, if the Royals need that depth piece, if they need a left-handed bat off the bench, he could provide them something. We know he's got power. His launch angle's good. He can hit the ball hard. He doesn't walk a lot. He does strike out a lot. And that, to me, is the most worrisome. But at this point in the season, I think it was a good time to try this spark. You're very fortunate to get Michael Massey, Hunter Renfroe, Michael Wacha back all at the same time. But this was that extra step. This was that extra addition for a Royals team that had been absolutely sputtering with their lineup. And even though he didn't do much tonight in the lineup, Michael Massey did, Hunter Renfroe did, it's that spark that I think could get this team going. And also to get the W, it makes you feel a little bit relieved going into tomorrow's game. As we just said, the offense now doesn't have that weight of you haven't scored since Friday, and it was only 2 runs, and your offense didn't look good against the Dodgers, and they certainly didn't look good against Oakland. So you look at what they were able to do on the road trip, well, to come back with the 10-game homestand, win with the new guys in the lineup, you have to feel pretty good about what they could do tomorrow. I'd imagine tomorrow you will see a much more laxed group, a group that's not pressing. The body language will be a lot better. All these things will be factoring in. And now it starts to become a how long can you carry it over? It's only 1 game. But sometimes you can look at a player or two being added to the lineup and things just feel differently. Because you can go back to this game and wherever the Royals are in 10 games, 15, 20 games, you could look at that as beating the quote-unquote spark. I mean, the numbers were put up on the broadcast tonight. Michael Massey, when he was in the lineup, made the Royals offense a lot different. It gave Salvador Perez more protection, who homered tonight. It gave them a more solidified bat in the 5-hole, and they gave him a little pop from second base, something they don't have with Nick Lofton, something they don't have with Adam Frazier, they don't have with Garrett Hampson. So those things are going to be benefits for them. Hunter Renfroe is an upgrade over what you were having with Drew Waters out there, what you were having with Adam Frazier out there, what you were having with Nelson Velasquez out there. There's more experience there. There's guys that can get hotter at the right time. And this is why I think moving forward, if they can all stay healthy, this is the lineup that we're going to be more accustomed to seeing, not the ones that have a couple different holes here and there, got a couple different injuries. This group's healthy right now. Knock on wood for that. You can hear it through the microphone. If they can stay healthy, you're not going to have many series like what we saw in Oakland, what we saw in Arlington. Hopefully you can grab the series tomorrow night and go for a sweep on Wednesday, but don't just leave it up to the pitchers to be this spark. You can let the lineup be a spark, and maybe Michael Massey, Hunter Renfroe, and CJ Alexander can be that spark, because certainly nothing else was really happening in the previous 10 to 15 games before the Royals made those roster moves. All right, before we move on to our last segment, I want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we return, let's talk about the 6th seed and the wild card picture and who it may come down to on the American League side. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can always find us on wherever you get your podcast. That's Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. And you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about our final sponsor today in SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades with SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. The Royals do not currently own a spot in the wild card. If the season ended today, they would be left out by half a game chasing the Boston Red Sox and the Minnesota Twins and the Baltimore Orioles. I do say this, though, with absolute certainty. I think that the final spot in the wild card picture is going to be a dogfight until the very end. I believe that it is going to be a combination of which teams get hot at the right time. That's the old saying, a cliche saying, and an obvious statement, right? When you look at a team like the Royals, you need them to be much hotter than they were over the last 26 games. But a bigger part of this all is just who collapses, right? You look at somebody like Cleveland, you look at Baltimore, you look at New York, and hell, maybe you look at Seattle this way. They're not going to collapse. Okay, in my opinion, they're not going to collapse. I think Cleveland is going to get close to 100 wins. I mean, being 50-26 or whatever it is, it's going to be pretty difficult to see a stretch in which they lose, 15 of 20 games. They're going to have bad moments. They're going to regress a little bit, as everybody seems to do. Cleveland, though, has built up such a cushion in the divisional race that a bad week isn't going to bury them. And with it being a bad week for them, they're going to need, or they're not going to need, one of these other teams are going to need to catch fire to make things interesting. And so far, when Cleveland's been really good, that's when everybody else is good in the division. And when Cleveland is really bad, that's when everybody else is struggling as well. The point is, though, the American League playoff picture is not going to be settled on June 26th or whatever it is. Is it June 24th? I'm a few days ahead already. It won't be decided then there either. To me, it is going to be who collapses in this. It's not going to be a team that just takes the sixth and final spot in the wild card picture and they truly earned it by just all of their winning and the grit and the tenacity they showed. No, a lot of it is going to be who bottoms out. Who's going to have that stretch in July or August where they do lose that 15 of 20? You know, the Royals have lost 18 of 26 going into tonight. You know, that's a stretch that put them from a playoff spot of, I think it was 3 or 4 games up on Minnesota, and then they had a 6 or 7 game lead on Boston. Boston closed the gap because as the Royals were cold, they were red hot. And tonight, the Blue Jays could have helped out the Royals by winning a game at Fenway, but their bullpen's terrible, and they gave up 5 runs in the final 2 innings and lost that game. However, Boston is a team that I don't think is invincible, even though they are red hot right now. Like the Royals, I think when they are hot, they definitely can go on a stretch of winning 10 of 12. They also can have really bad stretches and lose to the bad baseball teams. The Royals lost 2 in Oakland. They did get beaten up badly by Texas. I don't really view Texas as a bad baseball team. I think they're an underachieving team right now. I looked though at Boston. Boston nearly got swept by the White Sox when the White Sox were going into that series on a 14-game slide. Like, there are teams that I am truly fearful of and think that they can get red hot and stay red hot. I think Minnesota can. Right? I think the 2 teams the Royals are chasing in the Central can do that. I don't see Boston doing that. I don't see Toronto doing that. I don't see Tampa doing that. No, Houston, they have won 4 in a row, I believe, and they're about 4.5 games back of that wild card spot that Boston currently obtains. But I don't see a lot of those teams chasing the Royals and chasing Boston, for that matter, that are going to just run away with the 6th spot. And I don't see that happen on the National League side either. The reality is the American League is going to be very top heavy. The division leaders are going to be the best teams, of course. But then that top wild card team is either going to be Baltimore or New York, and they're going to have over 100 wins. The 2nd spot will likely be a 90-win team, and I could see it being the Minnesota Twins. The final wild card spot, I think, gets anywhere from 86 to 87 wins, and that's probably good enough. And they will go play the winner of the American League West, which, as things stand right now, would be the Seattle Mariners. So if you are a Royals fan and you want a better path for them, or maybe you're just a fan that wants to see them in the postseason, well, technically the easier path this year will be getting the 6th seed and not the 5 seed, because the 5 seed is going to have to go play either New York or Baltimore. The 6th seed will get to play the winner of the AL West, and the AL West has 1 team with a winning record right now, and that would be the Seattle Mariners. So that final spot is going to be up for grabs, I think, for the rest of the year. Even if the Royals go on a great stretch of wins here and they start to climb back into the picture, then build some separation. Let's say we look up in a week or 2 and the Royals have a 2.5 or 3 game lead in the wild card picture. I would say with 100% certainty, the Royals are going to lose that lead at some point in the season. And that's not a hot take. That's just fact, and we all know it. I don't think anybody that holds a spot in June or that's really trailing right now are going to be completely out of it when it's all said and done. It could be a 4 or 5 team race all of September, but I do envision the Royals being one of those teams. It just feels like the more enticing spot right now. If you were to make a deep run in the playoffs or needed to get out of the wild card series, I think I'd much rather see the Royals take on Seattle than take on Baltimore or New York in the first round of that wild card series. Again, getting way ahead of myself. And first things first is just getting back in to the playoff picture, holding one of those spots, which the Royals do not have right now. We'll see if things change up either tomorrow or the day after that. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Tomorrow, we're going to break down more of what happened in Game 2 of this series between the Royals and the Marlins, and then take a deeper look at this bullpen. We always want to revisit it, and right now I think there may be one guy the Royals should count on a little bit more. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.